I thought the questions would have been printed out long time. No, that's the thing. You see how they think though. Um, yes. Being hard, life is hard. You just have to hustle. And that should be passion. I should be telling you how to, this is your stuff. So you have to be prepared. Life is not hard. We make it hard.
Hello, Kevin. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
My name is Kevin Panton. I'm a child and youth advocate. I've been working here at the office for over 6 years now. I'm also the co-lead on the Hairstory project, which is a systemic project addressing issues affecting Black youth in Ontario systems of care.
What challenges did you face immigrating from Jamaica to Canada?
Some of the challenges being separated from my parents for that extended was only for 3 years. So it was a little bit challenges, but what was very helpful for me was that while I was living in Jamaica, I was with family, and that was the major issue, being separated from my parents for those 3 years.
How was it for you and your family adapting to Canadian culture?
You know, I could only speak for myself. When I immigrated, the issue was more so the culture shock. It was in Jamaica. It was very, it's a homogeneous society, and I understood everything. So coming to a country that, for one, the weather, it's cold. Now I was aware of that I was different, right? Being now a person of color, those kinds of things, and the system was totally different for me. So for me, it took a while to get used to. I couldn't really put it into words as to what the issues were, but I knew it was different. So issues of, adjustment and, being mindful of who I was now became something that now I considered, but it took some time. So if it wasn't for the support that I was having from family and close friends, I think those adjustments would have been a little bit more difficult.
Okay. Did the pressure from immigrating impact you and your family's mental health?
I would say it was an adjustment. It would be an adjustment for myself, being familiar. I think for my family, it's just, now responding to some of the challenges that I would have being a teenager now, like coming into my own and wanting my sense of independence and, adjusting to life in Canada. So I think it posed some kind of struggle from my parents, who now is learning that, becoming a young adult, and that I have my own way of looking at things, and also to balance that with, my parents' ability now to support and, be parents to me.
What was your emotional state coming here to Canada? New environment?
Yeah, I think for me it was very scary. Some anxiety. As a young man, I was just thinking about, what my adjustment would be like. I came here when I was 16, going on to 17. So, my formative years were with. I had a lot of friends. My social network was pretty tight and extensive, and I was giving up all of that to immigrate to be with my family. So those pieces that are very important to young people was central on my mind. So for me, it was like, will I make friends? What will it be like? How is my mom change? And will my parents really adjust to me being different, because it was a while. It was 3 years going on to 4 years. So for me, there was a lot of questions for me. I know that, you know, immigrating was for me to have more opportunities here in Canada, and I was looking forward to that piece. But, you know, all the other things, which, you know, being a teenager was more at the front and center of my mind. Like, will I be able to continue? I'm missing my friends already. You know, I was getting used to having my, you know, girlfriends, and I was very active. So it was almost like grieving the loss of what life was to now start something new. And for a teenager, that's very scary.
All right. Was there any groups that you joined in high school or anything?
Yeah, I was typically very engaging when I was in high school. Back home, like initially I was, you know, I played sports. I was on multiple soccer teams. I was also a part of the drama club, and the social aspect of school. I was very involved. I was very involved in track and field as well. So, you know, those were some of the activities that kept me engaged.
What was a pivotal moment in your education that led to where you are today?
I think it's not just one thing. It's a combination of things. In my family, education was highly stressed and highly regarded. So, you know, it is a culmination of different factors, like my family, my friends, you know, back home, and I would say in Jamaica, you know, education is stressed very highly, to be your best, to do your best. So that's something that I carried with me. You know, my self-esteem in terms of was reinforced because I did well both in school, and you know, that was reinforced because, you know, in terms of my family, you know, pushing you to do your best.
What were the external influence and mentors did you meet along the way?
You know, I would say that I was lucky to have a lot of mentors. Like when I was, you know, if I talk about in Jamaica, my family, my coaches, some of the elders in my community, they're the ones who basically, you know, instill values of, you know, to be resilient, to, you know, to be disciplined, and to also put in hard work, because, you know, in terms of long-term gratification, that you have to push yourself really forward, and that if you work hard, chances are you'll do better compared to where you're at.
So what was the cultural difference between Jamaica and Canada?
I think the cultural difference between Jamaica and Canada was that in Jamaica, you know, the values that were there, because the culture as itself instills in you that you can be anything that you want to be. You know, you've seen your reflection in all aspects of the society. You have leaders that look like you. You have people in positions that look like you as well. And you have a lot of trailblazers in your culture. You have Marcus Garvey, you know, the great Bob Marley, Usain Bolt. So excellence was all around you. So you felt that you could achieve anything. So when I immigrated to Canada, it was the first time that I was reminded that I was different. In as much as Jamaica has a lot of diversity, it was very clear to me that I was different. And that was it took a while for me to come to terms with that. I felt it in my stomach. I think at the time I couldn't articulate it to say that some of what I was experienced to was racism, right? Because you could get it from the looks. You could also see that people treated you differently. You know, some people don't even know you, and you can see them, you know, grabbing their purse, you know, you being overlooked. in certain scenarios. And even in the education system, I was going to one of the top high schools in Jamaica. And because I had an accent, the teacher wanted to place me back. And, it's through going through an assessment, they realized that I was much advanced than where I was, and that I didn't need to be in no English skills development or ESL. The fact that it's the same English, it's just that I had a Jamaican accent. So those are some of the experience that I have. I've also had experience just looking for a job. I remember going to this theme park for my first summer job. I basically aced the test, did very well. My parents instilled the values of always dressing the part, so I had my shirt on, everything, and I went into the interview. I thought that, I did a very excellent job, and, for some reason, the supervisor said, sorry, you didn't get the job. And it was very confusing because I basically did everything that I was supposed to do, right? And this was for food service. And when I was done, I saw this, this white kid, hair tall down the back, ripped up jeans, just walked out and celebrated with his friend. I got the job. So for me, it impacted me. It's like, oh my God, I did everything that I was supposed to do, and yet, why is this happening? So it took a time for me to really process that, and that also impacted the way I saw things, in terms of my self-esteem, how racism sometimes happened. But because of all the hard work that my family did to say life is not fair, right? And coming from a culture to say resilient is something that is always pushed, I knew that I had the value system to say, you know what, I will even work harder. And that's why I continue to pursue higher learning and also to be involved in my community. Me being an advocate right now started long before. In high school, I was a part of student clubs, Live and Learn, and it was somewhat similar to empowering, immigrant, racialized young people, how to really adjust to life in Canada. And that was something that I saw and sought out too, to be a part of some of the changes that I wanted to see, right?
So do you believe the youth are still feeling like that right now?
Of course, think about it. You look at all the issues that are impacting young people today. Me being an advocate is, started because of me looking around and wanting to make a difference. All of this started, through when I immigrated here and just seeing some of the difficulties young people have in trying to adjust to life in Canada. I've seen a lot of young people being suspended for simple things, and that really impacted me. Like, if the same thing had happened for another student, what would typically happen, that they would get a verbal warning, but in a lot of cases, because a lot of young people didn't have the support or people to advocate on their behalf, a lot of them would get suspended. And sometimes, because their parents didn't really understood the system, it would happen. Sometimes those students, especially black students, will get suspended and in certain worst case scenarios expelled, and nothing will happen. So those are some of the things that has inspired me to be an advocate today. And it didn't happen overnight, because I had some key people involved in my life. I had some of my coaches, my soccer coaches, some teachers, one of the secretary in my high school, who really took the extra time to really encourage me whenever I felt like down. Sometimes, being a teenager, you may just fall off the wagon sometime, but it's those key people who see the value in you that can mentor you and say, you know what, I can see you do greater stuff, and motivate you and take the time out to encourage you to do good work. And I would say that I was fortunate in that case.
Was there ever a time that mental health impacted your education?
Um, I would say yes. I think at the time, I think when you're transitioning from, teenager to young adulthood, right? And I think, there's all this pressure, pressure to find yourself and to look in what direction you want to go. I think, in retrospect, looking back, I thought that, I was exhibiting a lot of stress, and I think it also had impacted on my work, on my schoolwork. I think at the time, I think it was my last year of my last year of high school. I didn't care too much about my work, my schoolwork, and I think in some of my classes I barely passed. And I think it was those transitional period when you're coming of age and teen parent teenager kind of conflict, which is typically natural, was happening, and you trying to really find yourself and being more assertive with where you want to be in life. So I think at that time I would say that it was one of the most stressful and pivotal time for me, because I was thinking about, where do I go, university, do I want to work, basically owning my own voice, wanting more direction for myself.
How would you say your university life was?
I think for me, my university experience first was very hard initially, because there wasn't a lot of us there, for one, but it was also a very important time in my life. I would say I went to the University of Windsor, and there was a community. It was a small university, and because of that, it made me feel at home. But initially, I didn't have a lot of. I was the first in my immediate family, that went on to post-secondary education. So in terms of having that kind of mentor to say, hey, this is what it was gonna be like, this was new to me. So I had to really push myself to say, yes, I'm gonna do this, right? Because of the values as being that was instilled in me to really seek higher education, and because this will be the gateways to more opportunities, I really took that risk, and I'm glad that I did. But it wasn't in isolation or in vacuum. It was mentors. It was my parents. It was my coaches. It was the secretary. It was my mom's pastor and stuff. And those were all the key pieces that kind of gave me the motivation that I could do it, because in university, in high school, that was not something that was pushed for, especially for black students. It almost appeared that it was the impossible. It's only when I went to university I realized that, yeah, I could do this, or anybody could do this, right? Because all it took was time management, some discipline and a lot of support, and most students would do well. But as a black student, that's something that was not really encouraged. I've seen in my high school where a lot of guidance counselor and teachers discourage black students from taking on more challenging courses, and as a result of that, a lot of them got de-streamed to general, back then it was general, so general classes, and it limited their options in terms of going on to post-secondary kind of education, and basically stream them into a lot of jobs that are very labor focused and doesn't pay well.
Did you believe you faced any racism in college?
Of course, racism is, in university, racism was everyday life. It's when I was in university that I was able to contextualize my experience. Prior to then, I was just like, you knew it, you felt it in your gut, right? But it's there that I understand how to really look at it from a systemic or anti-black racism lens. Prior to that, I knew that it was wrong. I knew I was experiencing racism, but I didn't have the ability to assess it and to also advocate for on my own, given that this is something that was bigger than me, larger than me. I knew it, I felt it, but I think the beauty of university is that now I was equipped with some tools that can allow me to advocate and support and be allies to other individuals and people who are experiencing the similar circumstances. And that was key to why I got involved in student life, and to support other young people who were going through some of the similar situation. Because I believe that, you have to confront racism, you have to be a part of the change that you want to see. And that's also why, I chose the career that I'm in today, being a child and youth advocate.
All right. To switch up the vibes a little bit, did you see yourself in this position where you are now?
Yes, I did. Being an advocate, I was doing this all my life. I was doing this, as young as I could think. So to me, when I look at advocacy, I think it is a way of life for you. I'm glad that now, being a child and youth advocate, I can do the job that I was born to do in a more formal sense, because now I can reach a lot more young people and provide that kind of support. And even, to be honest, being a black advocate, it's also good to show other black youth and other racialized group as well that yes, if you work hard and do what you need to do, this is possible. Because a lot of times going into meetings and going into a lot of different residential settings, when you see that you're black and if you do have an accent or something, and they're like, oh my God, and you get the look like, oh my God, it is such a fresh of, it is such a relief when you see the look on a lot of the young people's face when they see somebody who looks like them advocating for them. It's one of the rewarding things as being an advocate.
What are your plans for the future?
My plan for the future, I love doing what I do and I want to continue, but there's other aspect of my work that I would like to explore. I'd like to go into teaching. It could be at the college level and or even at the university level, to supporting other young people who are passionate and to also contribute to this way, to the work. So I think that's my plan, and to engage other young people, and it could be volunteering in other community agency that does work to empower not only our community but our young people to have more voice in our community.
What advice would you give to any young person today that goes along the same similar path as you?
I think is to believe that you can do it. Like it doesn't matter what your experience. There's a lot of example in our community today that demonstrate that we are actually survivors. Not only survivors, resilience is in our blood. You understand? And that if you believe, reach out. Also look for people in our community that are doing similar stuff and just ask them questions, right? The beautiful thing about today, technology is key. You can have access, you can connect in many ways that I didn't have when I was growing up, right? There are so many resources, but part of it is just to say that if you're disciplined, you understand, if you have the right support, and if you need any kind of assistance, reach out to community members that are doing some of the similar stuff and ask for questions. And a lot of times they will they would give you that kind of support, right? Take a look at all the changes that are happening. Young people today are the ones who are creating new ways of resolving a lot of issues that I would say now I can say that I'm older now, right? And they're doing a lot of great stuff. What we're doing right now is part of that, right? So this thing that we're doing right now, we're reaching so many other young people, and I want to say that there's a lot of hope out there for a lot of young people. I know a lot of time based on the position that you're in, you may feel that you're low, you feel that you're not really valued, you don't see the end. And I'm saying the more work you put in, you will hone your skills, but also tap into other people who are going and doing some of the similar stuff that you're doing, because that's how you're going to realize that, you know what, we can do this together, we can work together to create the possibility that we want to see, because we all have a role to play. And it begins with yourself understanding the potential that you have. And as long as you believe that you could do it, right, you can look at other people who have done it before. There is a blueprint. So seek out those kinds of blueprints, seek out those kinds of support, and know that life is never going to be fair. But does that mean you quit trying? Keep trying, because that's how our parents did it. Resistance is in our DNA, struggle is in our DNA, because that's a part of life as well.
I'd like to thank you for your time, but before you go, can you tell the people how to reach you?
You can reach me, contact me here at the Advocate's office. My name is Kevin Panton again, and the number here is 416-325-5669. And you can ask to speak with me, or you can contact me on yeah, or you can reach me by email at kevin.panton@provincialadvocate.on.ca.
Thank you.
You're welcome.